Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be looking at the Challenger Mark III, aka the Challenger DES. This vehicle is situated in the British tech tree and is a premium vehicle sitting at a battle rating of 9.7. In this video I'll be covering the Challenger's loadouts, performance, maneuverability, armor and defenses and its modifications, as well as a conclusion at the end of the video, so please stick around for that. First let's talk about the Challenger's loadouts, and the first ammo type he gets access to is the Shot L23 round. This isn't actually the best round regardless of its stats, and I'll explain that when I get to the best round of this tank. But at 10 meters on flat armor it does 410 millimeters of pen, on 10 meters on 30 degrees of armor it does 318, at 10 meters on 6 degrees of armor it does 192, the rest of the stats are shown below if you're interested. The second ammo type that the Challenger gets access to is the Shell L31A7 Hesh round. I'm not going to do that meme again. This shell does exactly 152mm of penetration, regardless of distance and angle of armor. It's a high explosive round, so it'll hit the tank and it'll send off shrapnel from the inside of the tank itself. It doesn't actually produce anything, it just causes damage to the armor on the outside and shatters it from the inside. It can penetrate, as it says there 152mm, but it's very unlikely. The third shot that the Challenger has access to is the Shot L23A1 APF SDS round. This is the best round for the tank, and the only reason for this is because on angled armor it does more penetration than the other one. It does a little bit less on flat armor, but realistically at any tier you're not going to have more than 100mm of armor on the side of a tank. So it's absolutely pointless having 400mm on flat armor, because you're never going to come across anything that hasn't got angled armor. And the 334mm does allow you to pen some soft points on some tanks, like some of the edges of Russian MBTs on the front you can shoot through, along with some of the Leopards as well. You can go through the upper frontal plate if angled correctly. And finally the Challenger gets access to a pretty optional shell depending on your playstyle, the L34 Smoke Shell. This is just a shell that you fire. It has realistically the same trajectory as a heat shell, or an HE shell, not heat FS. It just produces a big cloud of smoke. This can be useful for pushing sights and blocking off enemy views. I have used it in the past, but I did take it off, and the only reason I took it off was because of first round ammo stowage, and the fact that it does take quite a while to replenish those rounds. But I will talk about the first round ammo stowage later in the video. It does give this thing some pretty nutty reload times. Now I'm going to be moving on to the stat card of the Challenger, and first we can see that it comes with two 7.62mm machine guns, one of them being the L37A2 and the other one being the L8A2 machine gun. These don't really have a purpose in War Thunder, although sometimes on the extremely rare occasion you can snipe someone out of a helicopter with them, although I would just use my turret, as you've probably seen in previous clips. It's much easier. It does get them, not really useful, but you know, there it is. The gun that the Challenger has is a 120mm L11A5 cannon, and it has a little ammo stowage of 52 rounds and a first ammo stowage of 4 rounds. This does give you an upper hand against Russian MBTs, as their 7.1 second autoloader is just not enough to compete with the 5.3 seconds that the Challenger has. This has helped me in many battles, as I have out-reloaded them multiple times, being able to disable them and then take them out shortly after. The Challenger also comes fitted with 10 66mm smoke grenade launchers. Again, brilliant for getting yourself out of trouble. The turret traverse speed of the tank of 29.1 degrees per second isn't great, as it will take you 12.37 seconds to do a full 360-degree turn. You do get negative 10 degrees of depression, which is pretty good for a tank like this. It allows you to peek over some corners and some hills here and there on certain maps, and you do get 20 degrees of gun elevation, which is pretty damn good as well. It allows you to shoot up some hills, as you saw in the second or third clip, and it also allows you to shoot helicopters coming at you quite easily as well. Now let's talk about the Challenger's speed. And as you can see, the stat card does say maximum speed of 35 miles per hour. If you're driving on concrete or tarmac or just general roads, it will reach 35 miles an hour relatively fast. But if you're driving on off-road, realistically you're only going to hit around the high 20s, so 27, 28, 29. You can cap out at 30, and obviously if you're going downhill you'll probably hit it, but besides for that, that's roughly what speed you're going to be travelling at. And even in reverse, on off-road and on regular roads, this thing caps out at 23 miles per hour, which is pretty damn good for a tank of this caliber. And lastly, for the stat card, we're going to be looking at the RP and SL modifiers, and because it's a premium vehicle you get 678% RP bonus and 435 silver line bonus. And this thing, along with a Roycat and maybe the Challenger MK3, very good grinders for Britain. It takes me roughly one sitting and I can get 400 to 500,000 RP, and that's me being sad and playing for a good 11, 12, 13 hours straight. Now onto the armor, crew positioning and ammo positioning of the Challenger. Onto the armor of the Challenger, and as you can see on the upper frontal plate you have rolled homogeneous armor of 50mm, and then a spaced external composite armor with nearer elements of 200mm, followed up by a rolled homogeneous sheet of 80mm again. This gives you a grand total of 330mm of armor. Onto the cheeks of the tank, and as we can see here we have 50mm of rolled homogeneous armor, followed by again external composite armor with nearer elements of 300mm, and then another cast homogeneous armor sheet of 110. This doesn't give an accurate representation of how much armor this thing has because it's also angled, so rounds are still going to bounce off regardless of if they do that exact amount of penetration. Onto the side of the turret, and as we can see here we have rolled homogeneous of 225mm, and then we have external composite armor in their elements with 300mm, followed up by a rolled homogeneous armor sheet of 80mm. This gives us a total of 405mm of armor. This isn't angled, so anything that does do 405mm will go through here, but this can save you a lot from side shots from autocannons, as they typically do aim for this region of the tank, and as you can see here, it is actually quite hard to kill the crew, although you can fire through the fuel tanks and you can hit their legs. It is still viable and it does give you a bit of defense even at angled shots. Onto the ammo stages of the Challenger, and as we can see here we have the first ammo stowage of 4 pieces. Don't ask why it's 6, it's just 4, that's just how it is. And as you can see, this tank can carry a lot of ammo and it is all over the joint. It's even in the cheeks and it's right next to the driver as well. This is one of these weird tanks where if you shoot the ammo, it will not actually ammo rack the tank, but if you shoot these charges, which are stored along here and next to the driver, it will ammo rack the tank. This is because this is where the high explosive power is stored for the back of the round, which propels it out of the cannon, and the rounds are just the saber rounds. On a side note that I should have mentioned with the first ammo stowage, this is the first ammo stowage charges. These also do get replenished with the rounds themselves, so as they replenish the rounds they will also replenish the charges and they will store them here. This is the crew placements of the Challenger. Up here we have the driver sat next to a batch of charges. We have the gunner who is just in front of the commander. One thing to note about the commander is his optics can be shot through and he can be killed through these. This doesn't happen very often, but on the rare occasion it does happen and it can be relatively annoying. And just next to the commander is the loader. Plain and simple. Now onto the modifications of the Challenger MK3. And the first modification that this vehicle has access to is Generation 1 thermals and some NVGs. Nothing really to talk about here. They're thermals at 9.7, they're Generation 1s and they're not very high quality, but they're thermals nonetheless. Nothing to brag about, but it's just useful that it has them. The vehicle also gets access to ESS, which is an engine smoke produced by a chemical reaction. The only problem with the ESS is that it is trailed behind the tank and any generation of thermals can see straight through it. Not very useful at 9.7, but there is the possibility that someone may not think that it is ESS and they won't try and look through it. And the last 2 modifications that this thing gets access to, and as is an MBT and most other tanks also have access to this, it gets artillery support, which if you've played the game before you'll know what this is. You open up a map and you call an area for designated artillery strikes. And as most top tier MBTs get access to, we have the laser rangefinder. This allows you to get the range of a tank immediately and it'll automatically put it onto your cannon elevation, allowing you to take a quick and easy shot. I am now going to spend the next 7 hours of my life creating a compilation of the kills that I have gained with the Challenger MK3. I'm going to regret this sincerely, but I do hope you enjoy. Please stick around for the end for the conclusion.
Tell me where to go, what to do. To another flow. Tell me where to go, what to do. To another flow. Show me the stars.
to another flow.
Tell me where to go, what to do.
To another flow.
Show me the stars. Show me the stars. Get it poppin', put it. Get it poppin', put it.
To another flow.
Get it poppin', put it.
To another flow.
Get it poppin', put it.
To another flow.
And in conclusion, yeah, I recommend buying this vehicle. If you're interested in grinding the British tech tree, then this is a brilliant choice. It's got good rounds, brilliant armor, great mobility, at a pretty decent battle rating. It performs quite well, and it's a decent grinder. And obviously, if you're new to War Thunder, I don't always recommend getting a top tier vehicle, as there is a very steep learning curve between lower tiers and higher tiers. I recommend starting from the bottom and working your way up, but if you're an experienced player, this is a great choice to grind the British tech tree, great grinder, and everything else I've just said. Anyways, that's enough from me. I hope you enjoyed. If you can like and subscribe, that'd be absolutely brilliant. And if you could share with a friend, that's even better. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time.